Welcome back to lesson 9. Right, again, we have lots to cover, lots to do, lots of trial and error and practice and mess ups, but that's okay. It's all part of practice. So, what we're going to be doing here is we'll be sculpting over the arms, trying to put in where the muscle points would be. I'm using the draw sharp brush, and I'd be pressing Control to push it in and Shift to smooth it over. This is like the most common and basic technique you'd use in sculpting. So we're just going to go over the arms and try to draw in the elbows or where they would roughly be. It's okay, it doesn't have to be perfect, we will come back to it later on. And just smooth over the other side of the arm and draw on some sharp bits and then smooth it over. Just trying to get that inside of the anatomy part of the arm correctly. I probably might recommend remeshing it so we have higher topology to play with, which it would definitely help. So when we're happy with the arms, I'm just going to speed it up now. It took me quite some time to get these arms together to model. I still didn't like them. I still went over them multiple times throughout the lesson and went over to smooth it down at the end of the lesson. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go into object mode. We are going to bring in a UV sphere, so because we are going to model the chest and we're going to make sure that is in good proportion size to the rest of the body. So what we are going to do is we are going to bring that down in edit mode. You can use the gizmo as you can see, or you can grab and move it. We're going to go back into object mode and mirror the object. We will scale the UV sphere down and place that roughly where the edge of the breast would be, just so we can then sculpt it down and place it over the breast. As before, we roughly put some placements in place just to know roughly where to put these. So I'm just playing around with these and just making these, scaling them a little bit less and just moving them about just like you would normally do. And then we would then sculpt over and push that up the chest, the top bit up, and we will then mess around with this later on. It doesn't have to be perfect right now. I'm gonna leave the topology the way it is and just round it off, push it in and round it off a bit. It just helps give that different sort of shape to the chest, and I'm actually going to lower it down and then bring it up a little bit more. I noticed I didn't quite lower that down at the beginning. So when we are done editing the breasts here, we will come back to this later on. I'm just going to push it up a little bit higher up the chest. It's okay, we'll remesh this later and then sculpt over it some more. And there we go. Okay, now we're going to move on to the legs. I'm just going to smooth it down. Oh yeah, a nice little tip that I completely forgot to mention at the beginning of our lessons is if you hover your cursor over the object you want to sculpt, if you hold Alt and press Q, you can literally sculpt that object without even having to switch back to object mode and then back to sculpt mode when pre-selecting your objects. When modelling this, I actually found it incredibly difficult modelling the legs. I think I had a lot of trouble trying to get the proportion right in comparison with the body. and as you can see, my legs were a little bit longer than I thought, but that's okay. It's all part of practice. I'm trying to get the right muscles in the right places, from the upper of the thigh and the upper leg, then sculpting down over to the knee, and then further down the leg. I think I took about an hour on the knee just itself, just trying to get that exactly into place, making it as perfect as I can possibly make it. I've looked at other references and how other people have sculpted the knees on characters. There's so many different ways of doing it. So I just used the draw sharp and the clay strip brush. It just does help a little bit. Inflate the side bits a little bit. As you can see, I'm just trying to delve in the sides just to make that knee shape as stretching. And then using finally the grab brush. Now I did use the scrape brush just to flatten some of the edges down. This is not necessary, but the scrape brush is pretty good if you don't want to change much of the geometry like shown there. I don't know why I used a pinch brush. That's not necessary. I was just experimenting and testing it out, seeing what it could look like with the muscle joints in play if I was just to pinch and make it sharper. But I then smoothed it out afterwards, and then used the grab brush to pull the legs out and in. Again, just experimenting here with the legs, and I felt like the upper bit of the leg, I want to bring that in a bit because I do like the body version, so I will make the upper bit of the leg in proportion and scale that down to inside the upper part of the body. So it took me a while to make the knees. I'm still not happy with them, so I might just go over them just a touch, just to clear up and have a re-look at the anatomy parts. It definitely helps if you have reference images to look at, which I'm trying to find some decent ones so I could also bring them up on screen to show. Right, now the feet and the toes because I've seen a lot of other 3D artists also make their avatar like to stand on tiptoes when sculpting. This just helps later on when, say, modeling a pair of high heel shoes, and this does help as well when you are using the armature bones, when using weight paints as well, as this does actually help a lot for stretching later on. So making the feet, was quite surprised it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was, but I still don't quite like the feet the way I left them at the end of this. But again, lots of practice. Look at some reference images. I missed the ankles out, so we can draw the ankles on with draw sharp and then smooth it down. Also, I had problems of positioning on where to place the heel. Every time I thought I had it straight, and then it was a little bit off-centered. It was off bit to the left, off bit to the right. But just trial and error and playing around with it, just trying to see how it can best look at. So here I'm just using the inflate tool a little bit. I was just experimenting a bit, and then using the grab and then the smooth on the grab, holding shift to smooth it down, and then just grab out the heel. I noticed it was a bit too wonky, the heel, but that's okay. I think I did make that a bit more rounded. I did round that off. Again, using the inflate tool, the grab brush just on the heel, and the draw sharp brush. I think it's like my 3 most used brushes. But yes, okay, I'm just tidying it up now. Okay, I think I'm going to end it there for this lesson, and we're going to move on to lesson 10.